Okay, awesome. Hi everyone. My name's Shai. I am really glad you're here joining for this live stream. Can I just check? Can someone let me know in the chat if you can see and hear things okay? Awesome. Apparently we are good. Alright, so I think I've told most of you what this little app is that I'm wanting to build, but if I haven't, it's a super important app. It's not. Where sometimes I'm ordering pizza and I've got a few different options of what size pizza I get or what combination of different sizes of pizza I get. You'll have different deals that you can buy, and all I want to know without getting out my calculator is which pizza or pizzas is going to fill me up more, right? So should I order the 18-inch pizza or should I order 3 10-inch pizzas? Which one of those is bigger, and which one of those is better value for money? So quite a silly app, but something that I was thinking about a while back, and I thought it would be a good excuse to just show the process that I follow, of building an app from scratch, using Vue.js as the JavaScript framework for the front end, and Tailwind CSS, which I absolutely love as a way of it's essential. It makes CSS good again, in my opinion. So I'm just going to go through it. I'm going to try and remember to talk as I go, to think out loud. But alright, let's do this. So I've already installed, the only things that I've done so far is I have my code editor, and I've already installed the Vue command line tools, which I will gladly, if you want, I'll do like a prequel that shows kind of getting all the tools installed and everything. But for now, we're going to assume we've got the tools installed that we need. So my first step is to say Vue, create, and then give my app a name. So I'm going to call it pizza. And we're going to wait while that does its thing. Okay. So I'm going to say that I want to go through and customize the features that it installs with. I'm happy with these for the most part. I'm just going to switch on Vuex, which I'm going to use as the data store for all the data just within the app of how many pizzas there are, what size pizzas there are, and so on. I'm going to show you what I mean if you haven't used Vuex before. And let's go for prettier as our formatter, which literally is just going to make sure that if I miss a semicolon, things like that, it's going to format things nicely for me as soon as I save the file each time. Just keeps things nice and consistent. Lint on save. And let's go. So it's just going to download what it needs, and it's going to set up the core kind of my basic Vue app. So it's going to do a whole ton of scaffolding behind the scenes so that we don't have to install Vue from scratch and install various things. This just makes it a lot easier. While I'm doing that, while that's installing, I can show you the little wireframe that I drew this morning. I just did a quick sketch. I hope you can see it. I don't know if you'll be able to. Maybe someone can let me know. But this was just a quick pen and paper sketch that I did of what I'm picturing the app looking like. So it's going to have a bunch of cards, one for each pizza deal, like one for each combination of pizzas. So a bunch of perfect. Apparently you can see it. So you're going to have a bunch of cards, one for each, like what I call a pizza deal or pizza option. Each of those cards can have one or more pizzas within it, and you can add as many pizzas as you like, remove the pizzas, resize the pizzas, and then on the right hand side of each card it's going to show like a great big percentage of how much bigger or smaller this pizza is. So you can click, like, one of them will say that it's the biggest one, and the rest will say how much smaller they are. And the one that is the biggest, I want to really like emphasize and highlight that. So I'm going to have it like ideally kind of popping out in front of you. It'll be in kind of green, whereas the others are a more muted grey, and you can just see that that's the big one. And if you then change one of the other deals to have a bigger pizza, maybe it'll swap to that one being the biggest. Okay. Cool. So back to the screen. Everything is installed, and it's given me the instruction here that I just need to change directory into my pizza, into my pizza folder, and then npm run serve. And what we should see is the basic core scaffolded Vue app ready for us to work on. So it's given us a URL. And there we go. We've got our own little Vue.js app. So I'm going to open that app in VS Code. Okay, so scaffolded this basic app. Source is where all of our JavaScript files and Vue.js components are going to live. The first thing I want to do is actually, the first thing I want to do is install Tailwind, because we've installed Vue, we haven't installed Tailwind for all our CSS, all our styling convenience. So there's a few ways we can do this. I think there are some plugins, like some Vue CLI plugins for installing Tailwind. I don't love using them. I'm going to just set it up from scratch so that you can see kind of how Tailwind gets installed. If you wanted for reference, the documentation where you'd find out how to do this is, you can just look up Tailwind install, and you get the Tailwind official docs here, which are really convenient to use. But the process is, we're going to do an npm install Tailwind CSS. To install the Tailwind plugin itself. And this is pretty much the same process until the end bit. This is the same process you would use for even if you weren't using Vue in your app. Anytime you want to install Tailwind into a project. So Tailwind is installed, very nice. Npx init Tailwind to create the Tailwind. That's just going to make the Tailwind. Nope, that's npx. Let's try that again. Tailwind init. Okay, that's going to make our Tailwind configuration file that has nothing in it at the moment. And then, so have we got, let me see if we've got a CSS file here at all. I don't think we do. So let's create one. New file, let's go css/main.css. And all we need to do, again, this is just kind of following through what Tailwind would tell you to do, is to throw these three directives into our CSS file. This is going to get processed by PostCSS, which is already installed automatically by Vue.js, by the Vue command line tools. So this file is going to get processed through PostCSS. PostCSS knows to use Tailwind as long as we... where are we? We don't have a PostCSS config file. So I think what would happen right now is that Vue would... In fact, let's try it so we can see what error message we're going to get. If I just say that I want to load that CSS style, so style source equals, let's just go CSS main.css. If I save that, will anything happen? I'm assuming that it shouldn't. We're not going to have Tailwind running because we need a post CSS config file to tell it to load Tailwind. So let's put a post CSS config. Module exports equals, and I want to require Tailwind, and I want to require, so the Vue scaffolding that we've done would have installed auto-prefixer automatically, but we're going to override that and say we want Tailwind and then auto-prefixer. Okay, so the other thing I'd really like to do is stop serving from there and start serving from here, because it's just more convenient to see at the bottom of my code editor. Awesome. So Tailwind is now doing something. Tailwind has now been told to load, and this little blue background that I told the whole app to have has worked. So we now have Tailwind installed, which means we can use these little class utilities anywhere we want, and not have to write any traditional CSS with all the fun that comes with that. So the other thing I want to do, so we've got, okay, to just browse through this app quickly, main.js is the main entry point. It's importing the app Vue component. It's rendering that as the root of our app. And what app.vue does is it just loads this image and then this hello world component, and the hello world component has all of this text and all these links in it. So let's get rid of the hello world component, we're not going to need it. I think I'm also going to get rid of the app.vue and replace it with our own one. If we look at the kind of the core styles that it's set up, so the font Tailwind will automatically handle fonts for us. These anti-alias things, they do make fonts look smoother, but I'm just going to add those straight into the index.html file, into our body. I'm just going to say class equals, and this is that's a Tailwind class. So I'm going to put that there, so I can get rid of these, I can get rid of that. I don't want centered text, and I don't want those colors, and I don't want the margin. Right, so there's nothing there that we need. Yeah, nothing in here is useful. I'm going to get rid of this app.vue as well. But we still need something in its place. I'm going to make a new component. I'm going to call it pizza app. So this is going to be where our app starts. This is going to be kind of the main app that's going to hold all the pizza deals, and then each deal is going to have a bunch of pizza pies within it. So that's going to be kind of our core Vue app. It's going to have a template, it's going to have a script. It's probably not going to need any CSS because we're going to use Tailwind for all our styling. So I can get rid of that. And let's tell our main entry point, it shouldn't load this app.vue that doesn't exist anymore. It should instead load components/pizza app. Call that pizza app. and let's put something in here. Let's just have a div. Okay, so that's compiling again, and if I refresh this, yep, we've got a beautiful blank slate to work on. And if I just write something here to test it out, yep, and if I do some Tailwind classes, just to see that everything's working. It is up because when I deleted my app.vue, I now haven't told it to load our CSS file anymore, so I'm going to need to do that somewhere new. Let's do it here. Style source equals. I can use Vue CLI behind the scenes uses Webpack, and it comes pre-configured with a Webpack alias of the @ symbol to mean this source folder. So I can say @/css/main.css. And the one other thing I'd want to do, just as a bit of housekeeping before we get started, there we go, that's working now. Tailwind is loaded again, perfect. The one thing I want to do as a bit of housekeeping is I noticed there that I wasn't getting any auto-completion when I was loading things, and I think if I say something like import X from like I'm not getting any auto-completion, and the reason is that I need to tell VS Code that I have like what my structure looks like, because it's not going to read my Webpack configuration for me. So I just need to make a new file here called, I believe, jsconfig.json. If I'm about to do this wrong and someone knows, then please tell me. In fact, I'm going to look up the right way to do it. jsconfig Webpack alias is perfect. Okay. This is exactly what I was planning to do. So, compiler options, base URL is the root of this project, paths, and I want to say @/anything should be mapped to source/whatever. Does that work? And then I also want to do, I think there's a way to exclude. Yep, so I want to also, when it's looking for files for auto-completion, I don't want it to use node modules, because there's just a ton of stuff in there that we don't need to be searching through, and also my dist folder for like my output files. And with that done, I would expect I might also need to restart VS Code, I seem to remember. There we go, now I've got auto-completion happening. Perfect, that's all I wanted. Okay, and with all of that out of the way, let's get that automatically being served again, so that anytime I make a change it's going to rebuild and hot reload this page. And the other thing I'm gonna do, that's not what I meant, split screen. Okay, so I've got my building, it's going to keep rebuilding over here, and over here I just want to do a git commit, because I've done all my initial like housekeeping. Ready to rock. Okay. Alright. So, the first thing I'm going to do is set up some dummy data. So eventually the app is going to let you press a button to add a new pizza, press buttons to change the size of the pizza, all of those things. But just so that I've got some data to work with, I'm going to just seed this with some initial data. So the Vue command line tool, when I did Vue create, I told it that I wanted to use Vuex as somewhere to store my data, which is why it has automatically created this store folder for us, which is where, so I mean you can read up on Vuex, but I'll talk a little bit about it as I go along. The other thing is, by the way, if I go too quickly on anything while I'm building this, and you'd love to know you want me to do a deep dive into any one part of what I'm showing, just let me know either in the chat or message me afterwards or whatever, and I'll do like full videos where we go deep into a specific topic, like how to do data storage with Vuex, or how to use Flexbox when we get to doing that with CSS, and I'll probably do some like CSS animation stuff as we go along here. But if you want it in more detail, just tell me. I'd love to just kind of make more and more videos if people would find them helpful. So essentially the way Vuex works is you have a centralized data store, which is kind of this state. It's called the app state. Whatever we put there, we can access from anywhere in the app. We can access that data, and at any time there's kind of it enforces these strict rules whereby anytime you want a part of the app wants to edit that data, it does it through what they call mutations and actions. I'll talk about the difference between those, but you kind of get this, you enforce this strict system whereby any part of the app can send a message to the data store and say, I want to make this change to the data, but those parts of the app, you can't just, a component of the app can't just mess with the data however it wants. You kind of have this strictly enforced thing of, it tells the data store, like, this is the change I want to make, this is the mutation I want to make to the data, the store will make it, and then every part of the app that is watching any part of the data that's stored here will update automatically. So to show you what that means more concretely, if I say, so we're going to have our pizza deals. It's going to be an array holding a whole list of our deals, and each deal is going to be an object. And those objects are going to have, I always like to give my object an ID. So while I'm setting up this dummy data, I'm just going to say ID is 1, and I'm going to say that each deal has a whole array, a whole list of pies within it. So 1 or more pizza pies, or maybe 0 or more. So I'd also say, by the way, that in a real app, I'd be tempted to not have these nested like this. One kind of best practice way of using Vuex is to flatten your data. So I'd have my deals at the top level, then I'd have my pies at the top level, and then the deal would just say which pies are within it. For the purpose of this, I'm just going to nest it in this way because it's going to make things a little bit easier and quicker to show. And it should work fine for what we need to do. So deals, so it's going to have a bunch of pies in it. So I'm going to, again, just give these IDs. And the main, what data do we need to hold about a pie? I think all we're going to need right now is its size. So, and I think for simplicity, I'm just going to say everything in this app right now is going to be in inches. And I'm going to store, I could hold the radius or the whatever. I'm just going to do the diameter because that's kind of how pizza pies are normally sold. In my experience, it's going to be, we're not going to need to do kind of conversions and whatever else until the point where we would need to. So I'm going to say this. Let's say this deal is going to have, for now, let's say 2 10-inch pizzas. And then I'm going to have a second deal which has 1 13-inch pizza. Okay, so that's kind of the structure of our data. We've got 2 deals. Each one has an ID and a bunch of pizza pies. And you've got 2 pizza pies in the first deal, 1 pizza pie in the second deal. So I'm going to save that. And then, so that we can see that things are working, within our pizza app, which right now is just a yellow screen with the word test, I'm going to say div, okay, one more thing I'm going to say actually. Whilst you can access state, I could just access all this state from any of my components. So at the simplest level, I could say I want a computed property in my app, which is going to be my deals, and I could say that deals is this dot. So one thing that Vuex does is it automatically injects itself into every component. If I look in my main.js, you can see here that the store has been imported and automatically been put here as a property on the Vue object that got created, the Vue instance, meaning that the store is going to be accessible from all of our components. So by saying $store. So I could say this.$store.state. You can even see it's there, deals. Right, so I could do that. And if I said here, let's say div v4, so I want to loop through the deals. I'm going to say for each deal in my deals array, v4 deal in deals, I'm going to just say I am deal number, I'm going to say deal.id. And what we should see is an error. Okay, yep. Need to return that. And I need a key. So best practice, this we've got ESLint has been set up to shout at me if I don't include a key on anything that's been on any looped components. It's a best practice to have a key on anytime you're doing looping, and the key is literally just it's like a unique. It's the unique identifier for each element. It helps Vue to know like which component belongs to. You know what? I'm going to leave the whole explanation for another time. You want to put a unique ID on the key. Okay, so there you go. I am deal number 1, I am deal number 4. So it's looped this. Pretty wants to put it on one line, fine. Okay, so we've got this loop. So I'm grabbing this straight from state. One thing that I really like to do when I'm working with Vuex is to never access state directly from my components. I'd rather that kind of the structure of my state up here isn't the concern of any of my components, and what we're going to do instead is we're going to use getters. And so I'm going to say get that components can only access the getters, and that way we're hiding the internal state of how things are structured from the components. And if we needed to change something later about how things were structured up here, the only thing we need to change is how the getters access the state. So a getter is it's the same as if you're familiar with computeds here. It's when you have anything that's that's dependent on some other piece of data. So if, for example, I made a getter called number of deals, now a getter gets past the state object from up here. So I could say return state.deals.length. So getters let you do convenient little things like that, and then anywhere in my app could say .getters. number of deals. Well, that's something like this. Store getters number of deals. So I could do something like that, and up here I could say kind of there are number of deals. Okay, so that's how getters work, but I'm also going to use getters for any time that any component of my app wants to access anything about my state. I'm going to kind of enforce a rule that my components are not allowed to access state directly. So I'm going to have a getter called deals, and all it's going to do is return state.deals. Okay, so that's still working. I don't actually want number of deals for now, it's just showing you as an example. Okay, so we've now got a couple of deals like that. And I'm going to say that rather than just spitting out this phrase for each deal, I'm going to make a new component called a pizza deal. And for now it's going to be, let's have a div. Just deciding what order I want to do this in. Okay, so for each of my deals in the app, I want to show a pizza deal. So I'm going to say, I'm going to import my pizza deal component into here. Import pizza deal from pizza deal.vue. And then I'm going to say components. I'm going to load my pizza deal. And now it's just complaining that I haven't used it. So let's use it. Pizza deal. There we go. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass in, I could pass the deal in directly, but I'm instead going to pass in the deal's ID, and I'm going to have the deal loaded into the pizza deal component based on its ID. So deal.id is going to be passed in to pizza deal. Pizza deal needs to receive that prop. So props, and it's called ID, and it is a number. My IDs are always going to be numbers in this app. And I'm going to say required true. So the ID is now being passed in to the point that in here I could say my ID is ID. Perfect. And then I'm just going to do that one kind of a very similar thing, but okay, yeah, one more level down. So what I want to do is show I want to loop through all the pies for this deal. So let's do a new component again. It's going to be my pizza pie. It's going to be very similar to what we've just done. So I'm going to have type number required true, and in the deal I'm going to loop through for pi in pies. Okay. So for each pi, well, let's import the component. Import pizza pie from okay, now and this needs a key as well. Okay. Now the problem is we don't have access. How do we get access to the pies for this deal? All we have access to right now is a deal ID. What we want to do is fetch the deal itself from the data store. So anytime this component gets created, it gets passed in an ID, and based on that ID, I want to have, so we've got component, we've got props, I want a computed, which is going to be the deal itself. So based on this ID, I want to say to the data store, can you please give me the deal that has this ID? So in my data store, I'm going to have a getter. So this is deals. So I could, in my pizza deal, I could load in all the deals and then find the right one, but I'm going to centralize that logic for saying find the right deal from all the deals. I'm going to put that right here as a getter. So I'm going to call it getDeal. And so this is going to be a function. So it's going to getDeal, this getter is going to return a function which takes in an ID. I'm going to call it, let's see, it takes in a deal ID, and it returns state.deals.find. I want to find, so I want to loop. It's going to go through all the deals in our data store one by one, and I want to find the one where the ID of the one that we're currently at matches the deal ID that we're looking for. Okay, so getDeal is going to return a function that takes our deal ID and finds the deal that has that ID. And so now in my pizza deal, I can say return this.store.getters.getDeal, and that's going to give us a function. I'm going to pass in this.id, which is this ID here, and deal is now going to be the correct deal from state. So and I could say, give me my pies, being return this.deal.pies. Or I could have just typed this. I could have just said deal.pies up here, either or. Yeah, so I could have either said for pi in deal.pies or break it out to here. So this is my pies and just say for pi in pies. It's going to be a pizza pie, and I'm going to pass in the ID, the pi ID into pizza pie, and pizza pie is going to say pi with ID, whatever. And hopefully, there you go. And if I put, it's probably time to start styling these anyway, so we get something prettier than this. So I'm going to say well, for now, let's just kind of give it a background, and let's give it a border just so I can see where the separation is. So there we go. You've got one deal here with these two pizzas in it. And I could even say with ID and diameter. So how do we get the diameter into here? Exactly the same way as what we already did for deals, where I'm going to have, I need a computed that's going to get the pi based on the ID, So let's call that, let's have get pi. Now this is because I've done these as nested, like the pies are nested inside the deals, it means that finding the pi is going to be a case of we're going to have to kind of go through all the pies in all the deals. We're going to have to like traverse our way in to find the right pi. I reckon the way I'm going to do that is the easiest way for now, I reckon, is I'm just going to say so this, I mean, it needs taking a pi ID, and then I think probably what I'm going to do for now is just grab all the pies from all the deals. This isn't going to be particularly neat, and I'll probably tidy it up a little bit later, but for now it's just the easiest way I'm thinking of is I'm going to concatenate. So I'm going to say state.deals.map, and I'm going to map each deal to its pies, pass those all into concat. So now I'm just going to get one massive array of all the pies, and then I'm going to search through that. p.id equals pi ID. And so now here I can say return this dot store dot getters dot get pi, and I'm going to pass in the ID. So now we should, in theory, be able to say pi.diameter here, and no, there we go. So each pi has been loaded in, so we've now got access to any of its properties, which for now is the diameter. So let's style this a little bit. Let's start doing a little bit of Tailwind. So I picked out colors beforehand, so you don't have to watch me debating which shade of grey to use. But I'm going to start out with a background on the whole border, on the whole body. Go for a dark grey. When I'm looping through the deals, I'm gonna start putting some, say class equals, I just want to put some padding. Something like that for now. And so top padding of size 8, left and right. I think I'm actually just gonna I reckon if I just say, what if I just say that it's not allowed to be the full width of the screen, it can be 5/6. That'll give us some nice border on the left and right, center it by putting an auto margin on each side, on the left and right. In the deal itself, I'm going to go white border, no, white background, sorry. Shadow. Just go for a slightly bigger shadow. It's not going to be, it's going to be a subtle shadow anyway, because it's a dark shadow on a dark background, but I kind of like that. My pies, I want it to just be around, I don't want it to say the diameter, I just want it to be a circle of that diameter. So, let's see, a pi, let's say, okay, let's just do it within here. Pi is just going to be, I'm going to go for a bright blue, Let's give it a border of a slightly darker blue. I'm going to say, well, the width and the height are going to be dynamic based on the diameter of the pie right now. So I'll do this in a minute, but so for now let's just throw a fixed width and height on it. That will presumably give me a square. Oh, I haven't closed my div. Right, that's going to give me a square for each one. I actually want them to be circles, so I'm going to go rounded full. Again, just a Tailwind class that adds a high border radius, so it makes a circle with CSS. I want each of these pies to be next to each other. I don't want them going down the page like that, which means it's a perfect opportunity for Flexbox, where I can just say, let's grab this guy, wrap it in a div class equals flex, and now these things are side by side, because Flexbox lets you say either flex row to have things go from left to right, or flex col to go from top to bottom, and if I don't specify anything, it's going to default to flex row. So that's our pies. The border that I added needs a border width as well, otherwise it's not going to show anything. There we go. Maybe something thicker. Maybe back to the first one. Okay. Let's just go back to my wireframe and see what the next logical thing is to do. Okay, so let's write the diameter in the middle of my pie. So within my circle, I'm going to say diameter, and then I need an inch mark, which I'm not sure I know how to type on the keyboard. No, so I'm just going to go and find it. Inch symbol. That'll do. Okay, so I'm going to say diameter and then, sorry, pi.diameter. There we go. I want it right in the middle of my pie, and by far the easiest way that I like to center things with CSS or with Tailwind is to say use Flexbox, because then I can say items center. That's going to vertically center it, and then justify center to horizontally center it. And just those two things should move it perfectly to the middle. There's meant to be a space before an inch mark. I want that to be white as well. I'm not going to put that there, I'm going to put it, I try to keep these a little bit organized. I like to have kind of anything that's, any flex stuff that's referring to what how its children should act. I put at the end any flex stuff that's referring to how the item itself should act as the child. I put at the beginning, and then I try and keep my border stuff together. So I'm not going to put white in between my two border commands. That's not sensible. So I've got kind of styling things and then size things and so on. I don't have a strict order. I think there is a VS Code plugin I saw the other day that will it'll reorder them into a strict order to keep consistency, so I might look into that at some point, but for now I just kind of try and keep my flex stuff at the end, and I find that plenty manageable. Okay, so they should be white now. Sorry, no they shouldn't. Text white is the Tailwind for making the text white. Now, I'm eager to get onto, I haven't finished styling these obviously, but I'm eager to just show an example of how we modify state, how we modify the data. So the next thing I'm going to add is below my pie size, I'm going to have a little down arrow and up arrow for resizing it. So I want everything within the middle of, I want everything inside the pizza to stay centered within the pizza, but I want there to be more than just this text. So I'm going to make another container div here let's just add a div for now. So I want a div to hold that, and then I want another div that's going to hold my up and down arrows. Which I'm gonna need I'm gonna need an icon pack of some kind to get my arrows. So I'm gonna use Font Awesome. It's nice, it's easy to use, it's free, it's quick to add into the project. So let's do that at this point. So I'm gonna say npm install Font Awesome free, I believe it's called. So that's going to install the Font Awesome icon pack into the project. Cool. If anyone has any questions, by the way, type them into the chat. I can see. I sometimes forget to look, but I will try and keep an eye on the chat. So, okay, that's now installed. I'm going to need to load it in somewhere, so I'm going to do that. I'm just going to do it at the root of my app component. So I'm already loading in this CSS. I'm just going to say I also want to load in Font Awesome / Font Awesome free / is this going to let me? It might not, because I told it I didn't want to search through node modules, and maybe that was a mistake at this point, but let's just have a quick look here. Font Awesome free CSS, that's it. CSS / all.css. Let's just do that for now. Close style. So that should be all the icons loaded in and ready to use. So back to my pizza pie. I'm going to have div class equals, and this one is going to be flex col because I want the diameter to appear above the icons. But then this guy is going to hold the two icons, so I want him to be flex horizontally so that my icons go from left to right. So I want one icon that's going to be fa-arrow. I think it makes sense to have the down arrow first. Let's just pick the one of these that we want. So this is a nice, I've got a VS Code plugin that shows me little previews of all the Font Awesome icons, so I don't have to look them up in the documentation. I think that's a nice simple arrow to use. And then next to it, I want the up arrow. Okay, cool. Let's get a little bit of space between them. Let's just give each of them too much. Perfect. I reckon let's make this one a little bit smaller and this one a little bit bigger. I want to make sure that they're centered this way. And I also notice that it's not centered with the diameter anymore, because this guy also needs to say that its items should be centered, center aligned with one another. Let's put a little bit of breathing space above the icons as well. Okay. Now each of these icons, I'm going to surround each of these icons with a button. I could just make this icon clickable, but for various reasons, if you've got a clickable button, it makes a lot of sense to use a button. So I'm just going to give it an exact width and height. And I'm going to say, so this is a Vue.js thing where I say when the button is clicked, I want it to do something. Sorry, as well as a width and height, I want to do the same trick that we used before to say center the icon within the button. Take this out for a second just so that I can do the styling. So that I can see what I'm doing, I'm just going to give the button a color. Okay, and the margin around the button, and in fact the text as well, I'm going to move those to be here. Okay. Same thing for this guy. Okay, so we've got our buttons. They've got you can click anywhere within that area, rather than having a situation where you have to just click. You have to get you don't have a lot of breathing space if you say you have to click just on the icon. So I've given it a bit of space around it with the width and height. And so now I can say, when you click on the down button, I'm going to say decrease size. And on this guy, I'm going to say increase size. And all I have to do to make those work is set up methods called increase size and decrease size. Okay. Now when we press increase size, I want to tell the data store to make this pie bigger. And I'm just going to, I could have something where you type in the sizes. I'm just going to say that when you press these, it either reduces or increases the size of the pizza by ½ an inch. I don't think people sell pizzas in anything other than inches and ½ inches. So, increase size, I'm going to say, well, let's set up in the store first. So, mutations are the only things that are supposed to ever change state. But in the same way that I don't like to expose my state to all my components, I like them to only access things through getters. I'm going to do the same thing down here by saying my components are never going to directly commit a mutation. They're always going to commit actions, because an action is much more flexible in that it can. So an action can make a mutation happen to change state, but actions can also do more powerful things. And as a general rule, I like to enforce that mutations are just private within the store. The components never access them directly. So, actions. I could have one called increase size and one called decrease size. I think I'm just going to say change pie size by. So that's going to be an action. The first thing, so actions get passed 2 properties by Vuex, get passed 2 arguments by Vuex. The first one is a context object that has things like a commit function, which you use to actually commit things to store, and the second one is whatever payload we want to give it. So in this case, it's going to be that you pass it a pie, the pie that you want to change, and we're also going to pass it the amount that we want to change it by, which I'm going to call delta, being the change in size. So change pie size by needs to just, well, let's get our mutations in here as well. So mutations are going to be kind of these low-level building blocks that are going to be the only place that actually ever changes our state. So we're going to end up with a mutation called add deal. Not going to do that one yet, but we will need an add deal. We're going to eventually need a delete deal or remove deal. We'll at some point need add pie, delete pie. And the one that we're going to be using right here and now is I'm going to have an edit pie. So I'm not going to have a mutation for like every different change that you're going to make to the pie. With mutations, it generally works best to just say, so these always get given the state first, and then a payload of stuff. So it's going to be, going to take a pie, and so this is going to take the actual values we want to write to the pie. So whereas this guy is going to take in the fact that we want to change it by a half, this is the guy that's going to do you want to do as little kind of calculating stuff as possible in a mutation, generally. So the action is going to kind of take this delta, add it to the existing pie diameter, and then just pass that into the mutation. So I'm going to say it's going to take in a diameter, which if you don't provide it, it's going to default to to the existing pie diameter. But in our case here, we are going to be passing it in. But generally, you could edit pie would have all of the pie properties within here, and they're all going to default to the current value unless something different gets passed in. Now I'm going to cheat here a little bit. Officially, you only want to change things within the state object itself. You want to say, so like for our add deal, we're going to end up saying state.deals.push. So it's going to take in a new deal. In fact, it's just going to take the deal, not even a payload of stuff, because all it's going to need is the deal. So it's going to look something like that. For edit pie, I've already got the pie object here. As much as I could look up that pie object within our state and then write to it, it's kind of redundant to do that. This object is an object that exists somewhere within here. So for convenience, I'm just going to say pie.diameter equals, and then it takes in the new diameter. And if I had other pie properties, I'd be doing them here. You'd have something like this. You'd say something else equals pie dot something else, right? Okay, so this is the only place that's ever going to actually change our state. This guy is going to do a bit of calculating, because it's going to say, I'm going to say new diameter, so make a variable here, equals pie.diameter plus delta. So that's the new diameter that we want, and then I can just say commit this guy, edit pi, and it needs to take in the pi, which has already been passed, and then diameter is going to be new diameter. And now in our pi, all we need to do is for increase size, we're going to say store dot, and to call into into the action we just wrote, we say dispatch. The name of the change pi size by, and then we know that we need to pass it pi, which is going to be this.pi, and we're going to give it a delta, which for increase size is going to be 0.5 to increase the size by a half, and for decrease size, same thing, but I want to change it by 0.5, by minus 0.5, so it's going to decrease the size. And fingers crossed, there we go, right? You can see that as soon as you press the button, it's dispatching change pi size by, which is adding that delta to the existing size, committing my edit pi mutation, which is going to actually change the diameter of the pi up here. And that's immediately because everything in Vue has been set up to be reactive. This pi, the pi.diameter up here, has been told to react anytime pi.diameter changes. Well, yeah, anytime pi change, anytime you've got this whole chain of things going on, so that when the diameter here changes, this guy was set up to watch that change automatically, implicitly, by the fact that it's computed. So it's being given a new getPi function, which is taking that ID and it's getting the updated pi with the updated diameter, and it's immediately changing here. And we should see, there we go. So everything is reactive, everything is, you've got to set kind of, this is telling us the only things that the outside world is allowed to call is at the moment this guy. And kind of you've got this nice one-way data flow. So, let's get rid of the yellow color on these. I think they are actually too far apart now. Now that I've added some space around the buttons. That'll do. Maybe not even that. Alright. I'd like some kind of hover state so that I can see when I'm hovered over one of these buttons, which we can do really easily with Tailwind, because we just need to say hover colon, and then let's just make the text a light blue. There we go. Same for this guy. And the next thing I want to do is I want the pi circle here. So at the moment it's always got this fixed W32, this 32 or 8 rem width and height. I want those to adapt based on the current diameter. I want to see this circle get bigger and smaller. So I'm going to have a computed here, which is going to be my size styles. Where all I need to do is say these are CSS properties now. I don't want to use. I'm not using Tailwind here because Tailwind is perfect for when you have. Part of the whole point of Tailwind is that you've got a fixed set of values to choose from. You can't just throw whatever number in you like. But for a situation like this, we do want the number to be dynamic. We don't want a fixed set of of widths to use. We want the width to just be whatever the diameter says it should be. So I'm going to say the width, let's say pixel diameter. For now I'm just going to say is this.pi.diameter. So, this guy is in inches. I'm not necessarily going to want that exact number of inches to be the number of pixels for this circle to show up as, but I do want this to be in pixels. So if I say is pixel diameter with px after it, and the height is going to be pixel diameter plus px as well. So if we start like that for now, and then all I need to do up here is instead of my fixed width and height, I can tell Vue to have it that I want a dynamic style on here, which is my size style. I'm going to put it in an array in case I ever want to add more styles to it. But okay, so that's worked. They're just tiny because if something is 10 inches, I want it to show up on the screen as more than 10 pixels. So let's do like a little bit too big for what I had in mind. That could work well. Pizzas should be able to go down to, I don't think anyone should be ordering pizzas too small. Kind of that kind of size. If people are going to want pizzas less than 6 inches. And I think that's quite a good range for like smallest and biggest practical pizzas. Yeah, I think I'm happy with that. I would like them all to be aligned centrally as well though. So that's going to be within my deal because that's where all my pies are being laid out. So item center. Awesome. Okay, I'm quite happy with this. Next, let's have it so that you can add a new pie alongside these two. So this guy is where I loop through all the existing pies. After it, so straight afterwards, let's have a little button here. Fixed width and height. Center its contents, and its contents should be, I'm going to use Font Awesome again to pick out an icon. It's just going to be a plus symbol. So FA, is it called plus? Yeah, that'll do. Okay. Let's go for a dark grey bottom. That's too big. Let's try again with 8. I want it to be a round bottom. White text so I can see it on the dark background. Yeah, I can live with that. So, except that. So the browser has this outline, this blue border, that it puts on anything that's all these clickable buttons. And it's a good thing to have. It's good for accessibility. It's good for tabbing, so you know where you're at. But I don't like that it's a square with the button being a circle. I don't think that looks nice. Fortunately, Adam, who made Tailwind, agrees, and so put something directly into Tailwind for fixing this, whereby you can use there's a box shadow built in that's kind of and box shadows do follow the shape of the button. They will follow the round border. So I could do it right here. I could say outline none, and then do a shadow outline, and I think that would fix it. Sorry, focus. So when it's focused, so now you've got a much more attractive border, but I'm going to want to do this for every button. So rather than just doing it here, I'm going to go into my main CSS file, and I'm going to say when you focus anything, apply some Tailwind classes, which is going to be those same ones, outline none and shadow outline. And I think let's make them important. There we go. In fact, now these ones, now that I see that, even though they don't have a background color, I think I'm going to also make them circular buttons, just to make that outline more attractive. So back to the pie. U and U rounded full. Awesome. Okay. Let's get some space before this button. So we're going to go margin left. Okay, and when you click it, I want to make a new pie. So let's fill in our state so that we already made an add pie function, we just didn't do anything with it. So let's just fill in the blanks here. So we're going to have an action called create pie. It's going to commit. It's going to take in. I don't think it's going to need to take in anything. It's going to make the pie, and then it just needs to say commit add pie, pass in the pie that we just made. This guy is going to, well, actually we need to say which deal we're going to add it to as well. Yes, so it is going to need to take something in. So create pie. It's going to take in a deal. Then we're going to say add pie deal pie. Deal and pie. Okay. So again, same way that here I didn't directly access state because this object is already going to exist in state and I can bypass that. I'm just going to say deal dot pies dot push and give it the new pie. That should be all we need there. We just have to actually make the pie. So it's going to need an ID and it's going to need a diameter. So sensible defaults. Diameter, we're going to start that out at 10 inches. We're not going to ask for a diameter when they press the button. We're just going to create it at 10 inches and then they can resize it from there. The ID all I want to do is just generate around like just a number in sequence. It doesn't matter what it is as long as it's unique. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new. I'm going to do it in here. I'm going to make a new file. I'm going to make a folder called services for all my little utilities like this one, which I'm going to call make ID. Okay, and make ID, I'm just going to, so this is a module, and all it's going to do is it's going to export a function, and that function is going to take in nothing, and all it's going to do is return. Let's have a little ID counter. Let ID equals. We'll start it out at 0, and we're just going to return that ID, and we're going to increment the ID by 1 for next time. Okay, so this guy's going to be long-lived through the whole application. So every time this function gets called, it's going to return a 0. Then the next time you call it, it's going to return a 1. The next time it's going to return a 2, because this guy's going to hold on to where we're up to. So I've exported that little guy. I need to import him into this file so I can use him. I can probably, if I start using him, I reckon it'll do it for me. So ID, instead of putting a number there, I'm going to say make ID. There we go. It's automatically imported that for me from make ID, and I just have to call it. And I'm actually just going to do the same thing here for these guys, otherwise we're going to have ID clashes just from the dummy data that I started us out with. Okay, and then from within our deal where we had our button for creating the new pie, I'm going to say click, I'm going to call it create pie, and that's going to be a method create pie, and we're going to say store.dispatch create pie, and if you remember, that needs to take in a it needs to take in the deal, which is just this.deal, and I think that's it. Yep, it just takes in a deal, it generates the pie, and then it modifies state to put that pie into the deal. So deal is this.deal. And I think, there we go. That's all we need for that. And those new guys start out at 10 inches, but you can change them. Now one thing I'm aware of is that if I keep hitting this, yeah, we're going to go well out of the which is not good, right? So I'm thinking what I'd love to do. Let's see here. I'm going to put the rest of the stuff around the deal right now, and then we're going to solve the fact that they're going to spill out. As in, before I do that, I'm just going to, if you remember from the wireframe, you've got this section on the right of each deal card, which is going to tell us whether that deal is bigger or smaller than the others. And then I want something at the top that just says the name of that deal. So let's get those in place now. So this is our main outer white card. This guy is the one that's going to hold the pies and the add button. So what I want to do around that, let's get a div around flex item center. So that's going to hold two things. First, it's going to hold on its left side, it's going to have all the pies. On its right side, And let's just give it a color for now so that we can see it. Let's give it some green. Let's put something in it. Okay, so that guy's there. We want to push it all the way to the far side. So Flexbox again makes this really easy to do, because so item center says that in the vertical direction it should be centered with this guy, which is fine. Although actually I don't need it because I'm just going to have it be the full height. That's even better. But then, so in the same way that before we've used things like justify center to say move the whole thing to the middle, I can instead say justify between, which says put as much space between them as possible, as in send that one all the way to the left and that one all the way to the right. So that's looking better. I want this guy to be, I'm going to give it a width. Yeah, I'm going to give it a width. A third is probably reasonable, I guess. I can always adjust it later. Let's map out what it's going to say right now. So it's going to have like a percentage. It's going to say, and then it's going to have either bigger or smaller. So I'm just going to put that in. We'll have it calculate the right number and the right word later, but I just want to sketch it out. So let's wrap each of those. Let's center that whole thing. So we've got flex, item center, justify center. Let's do it flex col, because we want one above the other. Okay. I'm going to bring in a nice font at this point. So I found a guy on Google Fonts earlier called, I think, yeah, Luckiest Guy. So this is the font I want to use. Select and then embed. So I'm just going to do it as an import. Let's import it into our CSS. Okay, so that's the font loaded in from Google Fonts, and I want that to be the default font that we use everywhere. So the way I'm going to do that is in my Tailwind config. So this is where we're going to add, this is where you extend any of the existing Tailwind setup. So if there's like extra colors that you want to add that aren't in the default, in fact, let me grab the default so you can see it. Can we get it from here? No. Let's have a look here. I just want to show you what the default config looks like. Okay, so this is the default. This is where all those colors that we've been magically using until now, all the grays, all the whatever, this is where they were all set up. When we said shadow MD earlier, it was grabbing this, and so on and so on. The font families look like this, and all I want to do is take the sans serif one, and I just want to add that Luckiest Guy font to the front of the list. And the way to do that is back in the Tailwind config. Okay, so we've got our extend. So I want to extend the font family. I'm just going to redefine sans, but the problem is I want it to be luckiest guy followed by all the things that were already defined in the default config. Now I can do that with I can say default theme equals required Tailwind CSS default theme. And so then when I define sans, I'm going to say it's luckiest guy followed by everything from that was already in the default theme font family sans. And hopefully when that compiles, there we go, everything is in our new font. So back to the deal. Let's set this. I am going to want the main, like the winning deal to be green, but everything else is going to be grey. So let's do that for now. I want the 25% to be way bigger. 6XL is the biggest one that we've got defined in the config. Yeah, it'll do for now. I might even go bigger than that. If I do want to go bigger, I'd just go back into my Tailwind config. I want to extend the font size, and I would just say I want to add a new font size called 7XL, and I would define it as, so 5XL is 3 rem, 6XL is 4 rem, so I would go 7XL at 5 rem. And I can add in an 8XL, and so on. And just by doing that, I now have access throughout my app to be able to say 7XL. Or 8XL. And you just see it update there. Okay. The word bigger should be maybe something like that. Maybe even one notch bigger. Okay, and I really don't like the amount of space that's between them, but it's being caused by there's a little bit of line height or leading on these, and when the text size gets big, the leading gets big as well. I think the default leading, do they call it line height here? Yeah, line height. So if this is defaulting, I think, to normal, then it's going to be 1.5 times the text size. So I'm going to bring that down, right down to, let's try none. There we go. Let's brought them a bit closer together. It's now got no space like above and below it, but we can fix that with some vertical padding on the container. I'll sort that later. I'd like these cards to be taller than this, and I'm also aware that the cards right now are changing size based on their contents, and I kind of want them all to be the same height. Yeah, so I think I'm gonna, let me just see here. If I take my deal card and give it like a, yeah, I'm kind of tempted to just set the whole thing to height 64. Maybe even 56 there. Yeah, for now I think I'm going to do that. I'm just going to say that a deal is always height 56. I want this grey guy to extend all the way to the bottom, so let me just see what's going on there. So this grey one, right, so that's the issue, is that this guy here, can you see, right, I'll enlarge that. So this guy here isn't filling the whole height of its parent, but I would like it to. So I've got a couple of options. I could put an H56 on this. I could put a height full on this so that it expands to that size. I think what I'm going to do instead, just to keep things consistent, is make this flex. Because flex children automatically will stretch in that direction to fill their parent. So let me just, I may not even need that wrapper, in fact. It might be redundant right now. Yeah, I think it is. I'm just going to combine these two. Get rid of that. And then the problem goes away anyway. Okay. If this guy gets too big for its container, that's fine. I don't mind it getting too big, but I want to hide the overflow. So I'm gonna put an overflow hidden. If I put the overflow hidden on here, the shadow is going to disappear, I think. No, no, we might be alright there. Let me just double check that. So if I gave that like a... Yes, the shadow is still showing, which differs from what I remember is normally happens with box shadows, so I might be wrong, or it might be something that's changed recently. I'm going to make a note to look into that. But we seem to be good there for now. So we've got the pie can go as big as it likes, and it just does that. I want to make this font size a little bit bigger, now that I see it there. So that's the diameter. Again, just Tailwind, I can say, I don't have to think about a name for that. For this div, I can just give it text, let's say maybe 2XL. Maybe just XL. Yeah, that's fine. And I want something at the top that says the name of the deal. So if I think about how I'm going to do this, I think I just want it to be in the corner, but not. I think I just want these to slide under the name. I want the name just jutting out here. So I'm gonna do. I am gonna up this height a little bit. I think I'm gonna need a bit more space. I'm gonna say. So this. I'm going to start naming these because before I get too confused, so I'm going to say this is the main. This is the pie container, which is the white part, and then I'm going to say this is the. I'm going to say the stats container where it shows the stats about whether this deal is bigger or smaller. So that's just for my own reference to make things easier to spot. Prettier wants to put it there, so I'm going to compromise and put it just straight above. I don't like having it inside. I'm going to keep it there. Okay. So that's the stats container, the grey side. So within this guy, maybe actually after all of it, I'm going to put this new div, and it's going to be, I can name it like I've just done with the other ones. I'm going to say this is the deal name, and I want it to float all the way into the top left corner, and I don't want it to interrupt the flow of anything else. So right now it's over here, but I'm not worried about that because I'm going to say I want it to be absolute, top 0, left 0. If I do that right now, I think it's going to go all the way to the top of the, let me just put something in it. Yeah, it's going to go all the way to the top left of the whole screen. I only want it to go to the top left of the deal. So I just need to make sure that the deal is relative. There we go. So this guy is going to go absolute to the top left of its closest non-static parent, which is now this guy. Again, if you want like a deep dive into what I've just done there or what I've just done in any part, just let me know, and I'll do like whole separate videos going deep into any topic. Okay, so we've got the name coming up here. Let's style it a little bit. BG Grey. I want it to match this guy over on the right, which was I think Grey 200. Yeah. What else do I want to do to it? Let's give it a lot more padding. Let's go 2 top and bottom, 4 left and right maybe. Might tweak it later. Text, let's go larger than this. Maybe a lot larger. Okay, yeah, I'm happy with that. I kind of want this to be a lot wider, and the other thing I really want to do let me just think about how I want this to look. Let's put something more realistic in it as well. So it's going to say like pizza option A on the first one, and then it's going to say B on the next one, and so on. I'm going to tell it to be uppercase, which doesn't make a massive difference in this font, but I do like that better. Text grey, let's give it a dark grey instead of a, yeah. And the other thing, so I want this, I don't like these straight lines. I kind of want, I'm kind of picturing like a slanted line here, and like a more, just for a more like playful feel. Yeah, so let's see about doing that. I'm going to do it first on this guy. There's a few ways to get slanted lines in CSS, but I think for what I need here, I'm just going to do it with a skew transformation. So where are we? Okay. So I'm going to put effectively a rectangle behind this. So instead of this guy being grey, I'm going to put a grey rectangle behind the text that I can manipulate. So this is going to be absolute and inset 0, meaning, and this is going to be relative. So this guy is going to let's just give it a background so I can show you what I'm doing. Okay. So we're taking this bit that used to be grey, we've now just put like a red square entirely filling where it was, because then I can start doing things like this. I can say transform and then skew. Right, I can do stuff like that, which is how we're going to get our slanted lines. I want it to slant the other way, so that's going to be negative skew 6. Okay. I want it to be behind the text. I still want the text to be on top. Right now, this guy has gone to the front because it's absolute, as in it's not just a regular static positioned element, but these guys are. So what I need to do is tell it that I want these guys to come forward to also not be static. So take this, I'm going to put them in a div, and actually this is the guy that needs most of these properties. I actually don't need the padding now that I've got a fixed height on the parent, so I'll get rid of that. Don't need the BG grade 200 at all, because this is the guy that's going to make the background, so I can get rid of that. Let's make this relative, so it should come back to the front. And then all of these things, flex col, the centering, and the leading, they can all go on this guy. What have I done there? Nope, that was actually a bad idea. I'm going to put it on both. So this just needs... let's figure this out. So this... let's put... okay, so... yeah, let's have both of them be flex. So this guy just needs flex item center, justify center. The leading none can be on either of them. That flex col items center. There we go. Okay, so if I just go to here, you've got, this is the rectangle that's holding all of it, and it's holding firstly a skewed grey rectangle, followed by this guy. Now there is a gap of white here, I don't know if you can see it, because when I skewed, so if I get rid of the skew, you'll see we had that, with the skew, it's doing that. So we can compensate for that by just also doing a scale in the x direction. Just go like 1.5 times. But I didn't want it to scale out this way as well as that way. Now that's messed up my centering and everything. So all I need to do is say that I want so by default the transform is acting about the center of my rectangle. So it's pushing it out. The 150% scale is going to go like 25% of it to the left and 25% to the right. What I'm going to say instead is transform, and then I'm going to say that the origin of my transformations should be the left, so that it just pushes out from the left rather than pushing out from the center. And so now you'll see, if I don't skew, it looks like that, and if I do skew, beautiful. And I want to have a similar skew on this guy as well. I don't want it to be rectangular. So where's my, here we go, my deal name. I'm going to do something similar here, where I'm going to give it an absolute inset 0. Get rid of the background from the parent. Wrap this guy in a relative div. And then we can start transforming the grey rectangle that sits behind the text. So let's go transform skew yeah, I kind of want it to be, I'm not sure I want the bottom to be so horizontal either. Let's put a little rotation on there. So I only want to rotate it by like a couple of degrees, whereas the only things that are installed in Tailwind by default is 45, 90, 180. So just jump into the Tailwind config. I assume it's going to be called rotate, but let's see, yeah, rotate, and then I can add, let's start with like rotate 1 is going to be 1 degree, and rotate -1 is going to be -1 degree. Yeah, I think it just, let's rerun that. No, that, I think it was just complaining because halfway through me typing there was a syntax error. So let's just wait for this to compile again, and I think we'll be alright now. Yep. So I'm going to say rotate 1. Yeah, there we go. We've got a little bit of a rotation there now. We've got the same problem with scaling, where with like a little sliver of white there from rotating. So let's do that same scale 150. So I don't want it to jut out that far, although I'm also, I think I was, I'm just trying to think ahead to the positioning of this compared to the positioning of the pies. I'm going to either need to push the pies down or bring this back into the flow of the document. Yeah, let's bring it back in. So I'm not going to have this be absolute up here. I'm going to take this deal name section and I'm going to bring it back into the flow of the document. I'm going to put it, so within this we've got our pie container. Let's call these main section. Just helps me think about it better. Main section and right section. And in the main section, let's wrap this in a div. And let's put our deal name here. So the main section is going to be flex col, so that we have the name above and the pies are going to be below. The deal name here now needs to be relative so that this absolute guy doesn't fill up the entire thing. There we go. So let's see what we've got now. So that guy is sitting there. That guy is sitting below. Let's just shuffle. I think this is back in the flow. If I said this was hidden, yeah, then those jump up. Okay. So this guy just needs to fill the rest of the height, I want it to stretch all the way to the bottom, and then these guys are centered within it. So flex. So that's talking about how its children are going to sit. They're going to all be in a row centered. But I also want to say that this element itself should be flex grow, so it grows as far as possible. There we go. And the deal name should be flex none, saying nothing should ever let it shrink all the way. Like it should hold it should stand its ground. I don't like that resizes with it, so whereas this guy, yeah, so this guy here should grow as far as possible, but I don't want the I don't want this guy to stretch with it. So let's make this deal name, if I just say self start, there we go. So it's no longer going to stretch to the full width of its flex parent. It's just going to take the space it needs to take. This guy, this width 1/3 right panel should never be allowed to shrink. It should always stand its ground. So just need to find, there we go, the right section, width 1/3, this guy, should be flex none. So it's not allowed to shrink or grow from where it started. So now when we do these, right, so there's something, so this is something that often happens with Flexbox. If I just go through these if I just follow through from the top down, so you've got this guy is 810 pixels wide, it says it there in the middle. What I want to happen is that this guy, okay, so what's happening is that this is pushing out. So this one has kept its 1/3 width, it's just gone way out to the side. The way to stop that from happening is, I believe, yeah, there we go, that's what we want. What's happening is that this guy has been told, by default, it's going to have a, it's been told that it should start out at the width, like its minimum width should be determined by whatever's inside it. And if it's got a lot of stuff inside it, its minimum width is going to be really high and it's going to push everything else out. What we want to happen is, it shouldn't matter how much stuff is in it. I never want it to go that large, so I'm going to just give it a minimum width of 0, so that it'll keep growing as it needs to, and after that it's just going to disappear down here. Now I'm going to fix what to do about it disappearing under there in a minute, but at least now this guy is always where it's supposed to be. So I've just made that change down here in the dev tools. I need to make it in the actual app. So that's min width 0. And if I refresh that, okay. Now what I really want to happen, firstly let's get some padding here, because that's annoying me. Let's get okay. So this, okay. what I'd really like, so if as that gets bigger, so this is just taking the space it needs now. What I'd like to see happen, I kind of want these to collapse, like overlapping over each other. Yeah, I have an idea for how these should display as you get more of them. Firstly, this guy should never shrink like that. So let's just fix that while I'm here. The add button should be flex none, so it can never get squashed. Yeah, so while this guy's got his width 1/3, this one should be min width 0. It should be flex grow and min width 0. So it grows as much as possible. So it grows as much as possible. If I hover over this now, right, so it's taking up as much width as it can. That's perfect. As it goes bigger, it's going to start disappearing. And to mitigate that, I want to start seeing these. I want to like squash them into each other, so that there's space for all of them. I want them to like overlap. I'll show you what I mean. If I take each of these, let's just give this a color for a second so I can see what I'm doing. So each of those are going to be okay, and a shadow so I can see where each one starts and stops. Maybe even that blue shadow. Perfect. Okay. So I want to see them start to collapse onto each other. So this is already a flex. What's actually happening, so by default a flex child can shrink. It should shrink to accommodate. What's happening is that because its child has the width of a pie, it thinks it can't shrink any more than that. What I want to tell it is that it is allowed to shrink smaller than the width of the pie that's inside it. That's inside the square here. So let's see how I can do that. If I take this yellow, yeah, that could. So it's already flex shrink by default. If I if I say that all these yellow guys should be min width 0, there we go. Then they overlap each other. They start overlapping each other as much as they need. So now we're getting somewhere. Yeah, if they can, they're going to sit apart like that. But as we start adding more, that starts happening. Okay. And what I want to let that happen to an extent, and then have it so that when I hover one of them, I get the full width of it back. So let's see if I can get that to work. Firstly, this last one is interfering with the button. So I want the last. Ideally, I want the very last one to not be min width 0. Yeah, I want something like that. So the last one takes its full width, and the rest of them shrink as necessary. Let's see. So I should be able to do that with. It's this one. So if I say last, this is another Tailwind shortcut, where I'm saying that the last CSS, the last child in CSS, should be min width. I assume it's min width auto is the default. We're probably going to have to enable. So by default in Tailwind, we'll see here. I'll show you in the default config. You've got all of these variants set up. So if we go and find min width here, yep, so min width by default it's got all the responsive classes, but what I want to do is say that min width should be able to be responsive, but also should be able to do last. Let that build. And let's just see what our min widths are. Yeah, we don't have a min width auto, so we're going to have to add that in as well. So we're going to say min width as well as all the other min widths, which is 0 and full. I also want one called auto. Nope, still not. Let's see why not today. So we can head down here to see why it's not done it. Because there is no last min width auto. Why not? First things first, just check that it built properly, and then go and dig into what I did wrong. I know exactly what's happening. Right, the last element in this chain isn't this pi, it's this add button. If I get rid of the add button, then suddenly the last min width auto has kicked in. So a couple of ways I can fix that. I'm going to do it by making sure it is the last child in its parent by putting a parent around here. Dot flex dot item center, and probably need to also make that min width 0. There we go. Right, perfect. That's what we want. So you can start adding them. They start squashing together. Okay. I'd like them to always overlap slightly, so I'm going to do like a negative margin. But then as they need to, they'll overlap more and more. I'm going to get rid of the yellow box now, so we can see what's happening properly. I'm going to get rid of the shadow outline. And I don't like how I want it to be smooth. I want yeah, I'd like some CSS transitioning on there. So yeah, a couple of things. I want to be able to hover and have it expand, and I want that to happen smoothly, and then I just want all of this to have a bit of CSS animation transition on it. So I don't think you can animate min width between 0 and auto, because auto isn't numeric. But what I can animate is the flex shrink property. So by default these are flex shrink, which gives it you can see here, a CSS of flex shrink 1. If I say that on hover it should be flex shrink 0, don't shrink at all, then I believe, and enable flex shrink for hovering. Actually, instead of min width auto here, I could say last flex shrink 0. That would also work. Then it's not min width that needs to be enabled for last, it's flex shrink needs to be enabled for responsive and hover and last. There we go. So now when you hover it, even if there are lots of them, now you can access the buttons. So that's kind of what it was. It's almost like choosing a record. So that's kind of nice, but I want it to transition smoothly. So back to the pizza deal. I would think if I just say transition, let's do transition all for now, because it's the only one that's going to have flex shrink enabled for it. If I go to the default config, you can see the transitions. So like transition colors will do these guys, transition opacity is just opacity. Transition all will do everything, including flex shrink, so that's fine for now. I could refine it later. Duration, let's try that. There we go. So hopefully that's coming through okay on the stream, but they're now gliding smoothly. And then the last one doesn't need to move because it's always fully visible. Not sure I like what's happening there. Let's see what's going on. So what's causing it to bounce like that? Actually, while I'm here, I would like adding a new pie to transition nicely as well. So we can do that quite easily with Vue.js transition components. So just we surround the guy, whoever has the v4, we surround it with a transition component, and then we can just throw some Tailwind classes on it. So sorry, it's a transition group because it's got a v4 within it. It's got a whole list of things inside it. By default, that's gonna, so it needs a tag. It's going to default to a span. I'm going to change it to a div because there needs to be a wrapper component there. It's going to need to be actually, you know what, this can be, we can do it instead of this. If I take, we can actually get rid of that div now that we've got the transition group is going to be that div now. And then we can start to say, so when it enters, I'm going to do an enter class. Let's try opacity 0, scale 90, so it's going to start invisible and a bit smaller, and it's going to grow. We've already got the transition there for the time being. We've already got the duration, so we don't need to add those in. In fact, if we do, we're going to run into problems. That actually might be all we need. I've told it where to start from. It's going to default to becoming opacity 1, no, opacity, full opacity, and a scale of 100. So I think that's enough. There we go. Maybe let's start it from a smaller size. I can't tell whether it's doing it or not. We don't have a transform, that's why. There we go. There we go. And yeah, I'm happier with that. And we don't have that bounce effect anymore either. I think this has got a little bit too squashed over to the right. Maybe it's okay for now. Let's get this. I want to fill up this space a little bit. Let's see about bringing this text. Yeah, so because we scaled this, I mean, we could change the origin of all of that to be the bottom right and see if that... Yeah, that kind of works. Okay. The guy that had to rotate 1, I'm going to do an origin of bottom right so that it's not jutting out like it was before. I'd like to bring these up a little bit. They look like they're too low down. So I'm going to take these pies and just give it a bottom padding more than a top padding. Too much. Yeah, that's right. Text color over here. I find the bit that says 25%. I'm going to give it let's put the leading on over here and give it a text grey 700 to match the other one. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that, with how it's coming along. So these still, yeah, but I can make them larger and everything else just moves to accommodate. I don't like that that's... Don't like that that's happening. So let's have a look at why. This guy shouldn't. I don't want it to be allowed to go any bigger than. Which is that a min height 0 issue? Yeah. So the same way we used min width 0 earlier, to say that it shouldn't spill past this line. This one needs a min height 0. And do I like that it goes? I think I want the name to be on top of this rather than the other way around. Which couple of ways I can do that, but the easiest, seeing as what have we got here? So this one is relative. Yeah, I think I'll just need to do that with z-index. That's immediately going to bring it in front of this guy that isn't relative. Do I like that better? Maybe I liked it better before. Yeah, you know what? I'm okay with it overlapping for now. I'm going to leave it like that. Okay, I'm happy. And there are still people watching. That's awesome. Hi everyone. Forgot you were here. Again, if you have any questions, write them in the chat. If there's anything you would want me to dig deeper into in future, if there's anything that I've gone through too quickly, if there's a topic that you want to learn more about, please let me know either in chat or send me a message, send me an email or a tweet or a DM or something afterwards. But I think we're making good progress here. There's a few other little methods that we just need to add. So you can add a pie now, but you can't delete them yet. And you can't add or delete deals. And we need to actually calculate these instead of just all of them saying 25% bigger. So let's do adding deals first. So firstly, I don't like that there's no gap at the bottom here. There's a nice gap here at the top from this PT8 on each of these. Let's get a PB8 here. Much better. And then below this bottom deal, I want an add button. I think what I'm going to do actually, let's see here. I'm just trying to decide. I could bring this add button out into a its own component and reuse it between here and there. Yeah, I'm going to do that because we haven't talked a lot about components. Whether it's a premature time to do it, I reckon it's alright. Because we essentially want another add button that does exactly the same thing as this one, looks exactly the same as this one. I reckon at this point you could argue it either way, but if you start using something in multiple places, it's definitely time to question whether you should extract it out. I wouldn't go extracting things out like for the sake of it straight away. And a lot of people, I mean, you get that a lot with Tailwind as well, where you're reusing some of these classes again and again, and you start looking at, should I extract them out into CSS components? And I think often the answer is people tend to do it too earlier than is actually beneficial. You'll notice very quickly when you start using the same thing in multiple places, and I think wait till you feel that. So in this case, let's get where is our add button now? It's here. So I'm going to take that button. I'm going to say I want a new component called add button. As a side point, by the way, it's totally intentional that I'm giving all of these components 2-word names. Generally speaking, you don't ever want to use 1-word names for custom components because HTML promises that standard HTML tags are only ever going to be 1 word long. So the idea is that if yours are always 2 words or more, then you're never going to start using a component name that in the future gets used as a native HTML component, and you end up with collisions. So here's our little add button. I'm just going to bring it in exactly as it was before, except the ML2. I don't want an ML2 on my generic button, so I'm going to add that back in over here instead. In fact, I'm just going to put it on here as MR2. So margin right on the previous element instead of margin left on this one. When you click it, it shouldn't do create pie, it should do add. And then we're going to have that method called add, which just needs to say this dot emit. So it's going to emit an event to its parent. So we're going to say this dot emit add. And the way that we would then use that is that over here, instead of having our button, we're going to say add button. Now I need to import it. So I'm going to import add button from add button.vue. Going to make it one of our components. And then up here, I'm going to say add button, and because we emitted that, we're emitting that add event anytime the button is clicked. We can listen for that event here by just saying that when the add event is emitted, create pie. Okay, so let's just make sure that this button still works. Yeah. Yeah, there's not enough space there. I'm going to add a little bit of margin while we're here. Let me just see. So because of the minus ML2, this actually needs a PX. This needs a padding left of 6 and a right of 4 because the minus 2 is coming into place. So now that, right, I thought that looked too small. So now we've got 4 there because you've got the 6 minus the 2. On the right, of this, right, so you've got a padding right of 4 there, but this one I want to do an MR of 4 so it matches what's on the left, and then because of the skew, the 4 that we've got over here on the right doesn't look like a 4, so I'm gonna, that's near enough. We could perfect it, but that's fine. Bring that up a little bit. Okay. Perfect. I'm happy with that. Our add button is still working, and remember we extracted it out so that we could have a button for adding a new deal. So we're looping through all our pizza deals, and then below that let's import add button, enable it as a component, and use it. Only this time, when the add event is emitted, we're going to say create deal. Let's make that method create deal, and create deal is going to say this .store .dispatch, dispatch an action called create deal. Don't think we need any parameters, any arguments on it, because yeah, with a pie we had to say which deal we're adding it to. With a deal we're just adding it to the app, so we don't specify anything. Let's go over here, let's add our action. It's going to be called create deal. Doesn't take anything. Okay, and it needs to create a deal. So let's say const deal equals, it's going to have an ID, and we can use our make ID from earlier. It's going to have pies, which is going to be an array, and then we can either, we've got a couple of options. We can either have it create it empty. I want it to start out with one pie in it already, so I can either well, I'll show you. There's a couple of things we can do. If we wanted it to just create something empty, then we can say commit. We actually already made our mutation up here earlier when I was showing you something else. So add deal, and then we pass it the deal. So if we do that, then what should happen, we've got an add button here. When you press it, you get a new deal with no pies in it. So that works. So a couple of things there, and then a couple of things visually, and then I'm going to come back to having the new deal immediately have a pie in it. So Firstly, let's have the button a color that shows up on both, so that's alright. I want it to be centered, so in my pizza app where I've got my button here, now I could just make this whole thing flex and center everything within it. It's going to cause problems for something later, so I'm going to leave that for a second. I'm just going to do it this way. I'm going to say, excuse me, I'm going to just wrap the button in a div flex justify center. Okay, and with the same gap there that we have between everything else. Okay. So that's working nicely. We've got the nice outline around it. Everything's looking good. I'd like to have a hover on my button. So BGGray 700. I'm going to say when you hover it, let's go for 600. Okay, that's alright for now. I'll take that. Would it look good with a shadow? Don't know, let's try. I'm going to leave it for now. Okay. Okay, so I like how that's displaying now. I don't like that the deal just jumps in without any transition. So we should be able to fix that nice and easily, same as we did with the pies. I'm going to go into my pizza app. I'm going to say, take my v4. So that's the element that's getting repeated once for each deal. Surround it with a transition group. Tag is going to be div. And let's add some classes. So where should it enter from? Let's go for probably the same as before actually. Opacity 0. Scale, let's try 90. Now because I don't need to, on the pies, in the deal when we were transitioning the pies, we put the transition property on the element here because we also needed it for the hovering. With this one, where the only time that we're doing any transitions is going to be when things enter and leave and move, but I'll talk about that in a second. We're going to do it the more traditional way, kind of a more accurate way, which is that we're just going to say that only while the enter transition is while the new element is entering, that's when we're going to do transition is or transition duration 200. Okay, so it's going to start out at opacity 0, scale 90. It's going to go to a position where it's opacity 100, scale 100. That happens implicitly if we don't specify anything for enter2 class. And while we're also going to need a transform. Transition, let's say transition transform. And duration 200. So there we go. Let me just run that again. I'll get rid of this so there's a bit more space. There we go. It's coming in nice and smoothly. That's perfect. Okay, next up, I want there to be a pie in the deal when you create it. So let's go back to here. So we just said make a deal with no pies. What I'm going to do instead, I could say commit the add deal. I could then say dispatch. No. So if I grab dispatch from the context, then from within this action I can call another action. So I can say dispatch create pie in this deal. So now when I create a new deal, there's a pie sitting there. Okay. Let's do deleting deals, deleting pies, and then we're going to have this calculate properly. And then I think we'll wrap up there. So, deleting deals, let's put a delete button on the deal. I want it to be up here in the top right corner. So let's just do it. Let's go here right at the end. Class equals absolute. This is going to be the container for the delete button. So I'm going to not insert. I'm going to say top 0 right 0. Within that, I'm going to do a button. Let's go like width 6. I'm just going to put colors on these so I can see what's happening, as I often do. The button is going to have an icon. And it's going to be on the trash can. That'll do. Okay, that's looking alright. I'm going to go rounded full. Let's have a round bottom. I don't actually want it to be green. Let's give it a color. So a little bit darker than its surroundings. Now I don't want it so close to the corner, but rather than making new, I don't like making like, top, tons of new top and right things. I think what makes more sense conceptually is to say put it all the way in the corner, just put some padding on this parent. So that's going to push this guy out nicely. We can get rid of the yellow now, because we've seen what's happened. Flex item center, justify center to get the trash can into the middle, and the text is too big. So we're going to go text, nope, not grey, text. Although actually, yeah, we should put a color, I'll do that in a second. Let's go smaller, that'll do. And text grey. Also can I do like an inner shadow? Is that going to make the button look? Yeah, kind of depressed into that. Yeah, I'm happy enough with that. Let's get a hover color on the background. Not convinced about the shadow. I'm not sure it's conceptually the right thing to do, but I'll worry about it later. Hover BG grey. What are we at the moment? 500. Yeah, now I think we have transition. If I put transition colors on that, I could do that if I wanted a slightly smoother. Don't know if you can see that there, but it's now animating. If I slow it down, you'll be able to see, hopefully. So yeah, that's probably something I would play around with, but for now I'm just going to leave it. And when we click that button, is there a text size smaller than XS? That is the smallest one. I could define one even smaller. I'm kind of on the fence on whether that's too large. I'll leave it right now, but when it's clicked, we want to say delete deal. So let's define that method. We're going to say this.store.dispatch delete deal this.deal. So just like we did for creating a pie, but this time we're going to say delete the deal. Let's go back to the store and actually implement that. So delete deal, it takes in the deal, and we're going to say commit I'm not going to call it delete, I'm going to call it remove, just as a convention, that mutations add and remove things, whereas actions create and delete things. Sometimes there's other stuff that goes into doing that. Remove deal, and so here we've got the state and the deal, and we're just going to say, so in order to delete something, you want to grab the index of it from within its array. So the index is going to be state.deals.index of deal, and then we're going to say state.deals.splice. From that index we're going to take away one item starting from that index, as in we're going to take away that item. So that's how we remove things, and again the entire app is going to, because everything's reactive, what should happen is when we delete that deal, the app knows to update itself. Everything that's on screen updates itself. I really don't like that there's no transition there. We've got our lovely one when things come in. We need something for when it goes out. So back to Pizza app. So we've got our enter class and enter active. All we need to do is say where it should leave to. So it should probably leave to the same place it came from, which is opacity 0, scale 90. And leave active class. In fact, I'm just going to copy it from here because it's exactly the same as when it's entering. So, okay. Nope, that didn't work. Why not? Okay, so let's figure out what's happening there. If I take one of these elements and I give it all those classes, so transform opacity 0, scale 90. Let's give it opacity 50. That itself works. So what's happened to stop that? just doing some debugging, figure out, there we go, that did go. So was it just going too quickly for me to see it before? As soon as I put it on opacity 0, yeah, let's put the duration up and see if it was a... So it works when it's opacity 50. Oh, we've done transition transform, which means it's not transitioning the opacity. Both of those should be just transition, so that we're transitioning more than just the the scale transformation. We're also allowing the opacity to be transition. There we go. Same with coming in. And if let's get the duration back down to 200. General rule, you want to use 300 or less for like micro transitions like that. They're not meant to any more than that, and they start getting in people's way rather than just aiding them in understanding what's appeared or disappeared. Okay, so that's nice, but what I don't like is that it leaves that whole gap there, and then anything below it jumps away at the end. See what I mean? Fortunately, Vue has a way of fixing that out of the box, where you can, as well as saying what should happen when something enters and when something leaves, you should also say what happens anytime it needs to move position. So anytime something else enters or leaves, or anytime you rearrange like the order of the array, things like that, you do that with just the move class. So if we say for the move class, I think all we need to put on it is a transition and a duration from Tailwind. It will handle, Vue will handle giving it a translate transform to translate it to exactly where it needs to be. All we have to do is tell it how we want the transition to look, so we'll do it like that. Let's try that. Okay, still isn't working because we also have to tell the element that's leaving to get out the way. Okay, so at the moment what's happening is this one at the bottom has been told to move nicely to fill any space, but this one hasn't got out the way of this space, so this one has nowhere to move to yet. So what we're going to do is we're going to say that while this one is leaving, as well as having its transform and its transition, we're also going to say it needs to be absolute, so it needs to come out of the document flow. There we go, getting closer now. So a couple of problems there. One is that once it's been made absolute, it's not taking up the full width anymore, so let's just say take the full width of its parent. Okay, let's slow these down as well so I can see what's happening. Leave active, let's go 1000. Now it's gone too big. Apparently widthful wasn't good enough. Why is that? So this one needs to be relative as well, so that this guy, in fact, let's tell this one to always be relative, because otherwise the absolute is going to be absolute. It's going to be taking the width of the entire screen, because that's the first parent that it encounters that isn't static. So let's try that again now. There we go. That is looking beautiful. So this guy slowly fades away while this guy jumps into fill its space, and even if we've got loads of them, I'll zoom out. Oh, nope, apparently I can't. There we go, that's much nicer. Okay, I'm loving that. Let's just get the duration put back down to 200. Right, 200 is, I think, too slow. Too fast. One of them at least needs to be slower. Okay, I'm going to break my own rule and say the move class should be 500, not 300. That seems much more natural to me. Okay, perfect. Cool. Okay, let's go quickly on the last bit. Deleting pies. So we're going to go. One thing that I haven't done along the way, which I probably should have, is each time you get to a point where you're kind of happy with things, where things are at, is to do a git commit, just so that you've got a checkpoint if you ever need to. You screw things up, you want to just get back to the last point that you knew was good. That's generally a good idea to be doing, much more frequently than I've been doing today. Okay, decrease size and increase size buttons. So we've got a div for our diameter. Below that we've got a div that's going to house our 2 buttons. Below that I want to have a final div that's going to have a delete button. So let's copy one of these to start out using. We're going to say delete pie. It's going to have fa trash, but otherwise it's going to look pretty similar. Nice. Okay, it's too big, so let's go maybe small to match the size of the let's give it a smaller surround as well. Yeah, I mean I could play around with. Yeah, I think I'm going to get rid of, maybe if I get rid of the leading on this, that might make sense. Just to bring these things a bit closer together, they seem quite stretched out. So right now it's going to be complaining because we haven't defined delete pie. So let's add a method for deleting pie. Delete pie, and similar to what we've been doing before, store.dispatch delete pie. We're going to say which pie. In the store, we're going to have a delete pie action that takes a pie. You've seen all this by now. Commit remove pie. If you started having tons more stuff, not just deals and pies, then you'd start looking at helpers that would kind of generate all of these similar things for you. But for now, I think we're happy. It would be overkill to do anything else. Pie. And we're going to say, same as we did for removing a deal, index equals. So here it gets interesting because we need to know which deal we're deleting the pie from. So I could pass it in from the component, but it seems unnecessary because we should be able to work out which deal the pie is in. So And I think we actually, well, okay. So let's say we need to find the deal for a pi. I could say here that the deal equals, and I'm going to say state.deals.find. I want to say I need to find the deal that has this pi within it. So we want to find the deal where d.pies. They say sum. Other languages call this like contains or any, but I'm saying find the deal where the pies array has some item in it where the pi ID matches the pi we're trying to remove. Okay, that's going to get us the deal. But what I realize is that that's quite a handy kind of function, to the point that I'm probably going to extract it out. And I said at the very beginning I wanted to clean up this function here, and I think I may have found the answer, because if I take this, I'm going to take that away, and I'm going to make a getter of, let's say, get deal containing pi ID, and we're going to return a function that takes a pi ID and finds the deal that contains it. Okay, so now we can say get deal containing pi ID. We can use it to neaten up this getter for getting a pi by its ID, because we could say, rather than doing this kind of messy thing where we loop through more than once and we just lump all the pies together, I could say return deal equals, getters can reference other getters, so I can say deal equals getters dot get deal containing pi ID. Sorry, this needs to happen within this function. Deal equals getters dot get deal containing pi ID, and then return deal dot find. So I think that's a bit neater. We get the deal containing that pi. We're still looping twice, but it keeps our code nicely formatted, and it doesn't matter because we're barely looping through anything. There's no need to optimize that. So the deal equals get the deal containing that pi ID, and then within that deal find the right pi and return that, and that's how we do get pi. And we can do the same down here. So for remove pi, we're going to say well, so the mutation can't and shouldn't access the getters, but the action can. So in the delete pi action, we're going to say this is where we find the deal, so we can because we can grab the getters from here. So getters.getDeal containing pi ID, pi.id. That's going to tell us the deal in question, and then we can tell the mutation. We can give the mutation the deal and the pi, and then all that the mutation has to do is say index equals deal dot index of pi, state, well, I'm not going to do it through state for the reasons we talked about earlier. Deal dot, sorry, that's deal dot pies dot index of. And then we're going to say deal dot pies dot splice from the index take away 1 pi. So it's going to take away the pi that we pressed the delete button for. Okay, something's not worked, so we have a typo somewhere. Deal.find is not a function. That is very true, because it should be deal.pies.find. There we go. So we should now be able to delete a pi. Let's get a quick transition on it. So we've already got an enter transition, we just need a leave to. It's going to be, let's leave to the same place that it came from. Now, if you remember with deals, I made it so that everything after it nicely slides in. It's going to be a little bit trickier to do when we're within a flex arrangement like this. I will gladly talk through it later, but I'm not going to do it on this video right now because I want to wrap up soon. So we've got it transitioning. We don't have the others sliding nicely to meet it, but we could do. It just takes a tiny bit more work than it would do if we weren't in a flex environment. So let me know if you want to work through that another time. Okay, and the last thing we want to do is have this calculate properly. So the way I want to do that is I want to have a getter that gets what I call my stats. So this is going to be for each deal I want to figure out whether it's the biggest one or not, and if it is, then show how much bigger it is than the next item along, than the next smallest, so the next biggest, and if it's not the largest, then I want to say how much smaller it is. So so we've got our stats here. First thing I want to do, there's a few little helper functions that I know I'm going to need. So I'm going to define those up front. So firstly, I know that I'm going to need to be able to take a pie and tell you the area of it. So there's going to be a function that takes in a pie, and we want to say pi.diameter, so area of a circle, pi r squared. So I could say diameter over 2, that's going to give me the radius. So pi times that, and then times that again. So pi r squared. Although actually as I do that I realise that I could go even neater and say circle area and go for any given radius. So if this is exactly the kind of thing where I could totally take these functions and extract them out into a service, like a module of their own. But for a little app like this, where I know this is the only place I'm going to use them, right now I'm just going to leave it here. But it's something to kind of bear in mind that you might want to do, especially if you wanted to use them somewhere else. So circle area is going to be a function that takes the radius and does pi r squared. And the pi area is going to be, you just have to do circle area of pi.diameter over 2. So you pass in the radius and you're done. Then I want something for adding up. I want to be able to sum multiple numbers together. There's no built-in way of summing numbers in JavaScript, I don't think. So I'm going to say take in a bunch of numbers, and we can use reduce, which again, like I said about lots of things, I'm not going to go into in detail here, but we can talk about on another video. Got an accumulator, and then it takes in the next number, and each time we're just going to say that. So very simply, what's going on here is we're saying start out with the number 0, and then go through all the numbers in turn, and each time you get to a number, take wherever the running, this is like a running total, so you take the running total and you add the new number to it, and you return that. And then the next number comes along and you say take the running total, add the new number to it, and it's just going to go through the entire numbers array, adding the new number to the running total each time, and then the final answer is going to get returned. And then I can say that the area of an entire deal is you taking a deal, and we just have to say sum of, and then, so what numbers do we need? We just need the area of each pie. So if I say deal.pies.map, and I'm going to say for each pie, actually I'm just going to be saying pi goes to pi area p, which I can simplify to just say, can literally just say that. So I'm going to say, so it's a map of, for every pie in this deal, run it through pi area, which is going to give us the area of that pie, and then it says this is going to end up as an array of all the pie areas. Pass that into sum, and we now have the entire area for the deal. So those little functions are going to be let's bring that one up there, because these two are actually generic, nothing to do with pizzas. These two are specific to our pizza implementation. But now that we have those, what should we say? So let's say we're going to have our stats. There's lots of ways of doing this. I'm just going to say, let's map our deals. So for each deal, we're going to make a corresponding little object that has a deal ID. I think this will work. And then the area is, and we're just going to use our function from before, deal area of our deal. I'm going to call that deal. I don't usually when I'm doing functional JavaScript like this, but sometimes it feels like it makes more sense. Okay, so for each deal we're going to map to a corresponding little object of a deal ID and an area, because now what I can do is sort it based by area, and that's how we're going to find out which one's the biggest. So I'm going to say stats.sort, and I'm going to give a custom function because it's not going to know that I want to sort it by area. So I'm going to tell it b.area minus a.area. So subtract. Again, we can talk about these in more detail, but JavaScript is going to do a sort, and it's going to it's just going to sort by taking two elements at a time and asking us which one should win, which one should be bigger. So I'm going to do that by subtracting the areas. If it comes out as a positive number, then it knows to put b first. If it comes out as a negative number, it knows to put a first. And okay, yeah, I think that should work. We've now got all of those in order. The first one, so stats 0, essentially we just want to say like is the biggest one. And all the others are not. I also want to calculate the difference for each one. So I want to be able to say how much bigger it is. So I think what makes more sense to do is to say, let's go through each of these little objects in turn. Let's call it stat. For each of these objects is going to be called a stat. These names aren't great. I would probably look to change them afterwards, but stats.forEach. So for each one, I'm going to say stat.isLargest equals, if I get the index as well, then I can say it's whether the index is 0. So if the index is 0, then this is the largest one, otherwise it's not. And for the difference, so I was trying to figure this out earlier. The biggest one should show a percentage bigger based on how much bigger it is than the next biggest, right? So for the biggest, I'm just mapping this out loud. For the biggest, we're going to say like the diff equals it's going to be this guy's area minus the next guy's area, so minus like stats1 dot area divided by stats1 dot area, right? So if you've got if you've got like, if this guy's area is 100 and this one is 20, then you take the 100, take away 20 gives you 80. 80 over the 20 gives you 4. which, yeah, as a percentage is 400%, telling you that that 100 is 400% larger than the 20. So that works. For all the others, stat.diff equals, it would be, you take the current one, you take away the biggest one. Yeah, your comparison stat is the biggest one otherwise. So for all the other ones, you're going to say how much smaller it is by essentially doing the reverse of what we did before. Now, these two functions, these two formulas look so similar that we can be nice and dry with them and say, if you like, comparison stat, or other stat, comparison stat, equals, I'm going to say if this is the first one, then the comparison to use is stats1. Otherwise, use stats0 as your comparison, because then we can just say stat.diff equals the current area minus comparison stat.area divided by comparison stat.area, and that will be the same regardless of which one we're on. So now for everyone, we're going to have a deal ID, an area, an isLargest flag, and a diff, although now we're going to get, okay, yeah, I'm happy with that. I'm kind of thinking this should be an object instead of an array. What would that look like? So then we would need, this would be a reduce, where we'd say we'd say deal.id equals I guess it would look like, it makes sorting it more difficult. Yeah, you know what, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to keep it as an array because it makes it easier for sorting. Then I'm going to loop through and add those, and then I could turn it into an object for returning it. So then I could return stats.reduce. Where we say stat.dealID. Yeah, I'm content with that for now. And then we're going to need, so that's an object of all the stats, and then we're going to need a get deal stats function. So return, so it's going to take in a deal, and it's going to give us, we definitely need to get access to getters here. So we're going to take a deal, and it's going to say, give us getters dot stats deal.id. Okay, within the deal, we can now access that little stat object. Turn this dot store dot getters dot get deal stat. Get deal stats. Yeah, I really need to work on that naming. But this.deal. And to see if that's worked, instead of writing 25% here, well, first of all, instead of writing bigger, let's write, let's just go json.stringify stats. Isn't defined. There we go. Awesome. So that one says deal ID is 0, area 157 is largest true. This one, let's get some wrapping on there. Let's just do that, I guess. That's gonna, there you go. Is largest true, is largest false. This one it's saying is 18% larger, and this one is saying is 15% smaller. Yeah, I reckon that's roughly right. We can check by, let's do two 10-inch pizzas versus one 10-inch pizza. This one is largest true, 100% larger, and this is 50% smaller. That's exactly right. Bring in one more that's, let's say, let's go 3 pizzas, 2 pizzas and 1. So now this one is the largest, 50% larger than the next. Yep. This one is 1/3 smaller than the biggest. Yes. And this one is 2/3 smaller. Okay. Very happy with those. Maybe we should do a video about how to do testing rather than just doing it by eye like that. Anyway. So those look good. Let's just get them put into our UI now. So the first thing I notice is that having these as negative is never going to help. We've already got the is largest flag to say whether this one is bigger or smaller, so I don't actually want a minus symbol there. So when I do my diff, I'm going to say math.abs, which just essentially means get rid of the minus sign, if there is one. That's cool. We're going to have, so this used to say bigger or like this should say bigger or smaller, so I'm going to say stat dot, you know what, I'm going to let's go for, we're going to need to use it a few times, so just as a convenience, let's say anytime you can access a you can always access this thing called isLargest, which is just going to say this.stats.isLargest. Stats.isLargest. If it is the largest, then we're going to say bigger. If it's not, we're going to say smaller. Nice. Do I prefer that in uppercase? Yeah, maybe. And this guy is going to be stats dot. Oh, sorry, I said here I don't actually need to say stats dot. I'm only doing that because I know I'm going to need to use isLargest a bunch more times. I'm going to use it to set the color and other things. This one is just going to be stats.diff. Okay, now I want to turn that into a percentage. I could put some code in here. What I'm going to do is use a Vue filter. Because this is a nice straightforward transformation. It doesn't rely on any outside state. I just want to say, like, anytime, I just want to be able to take a decimal like this and format it as a nice percentage. So, gonna make a new folder here called filters, and I'm going to make a filter within it called percentage. And a filter looks like this. I'm going to export a function. A filter is essentially just takes a value and manipulates it in some way, returns something else. So in this case, the value is going to be that number. And what I want to do is say value, times it by 100, and then I'm going to add a percent symbol. And I think, well, we're going to need to do some rounding, but let's try that first. So that's our filter. What's it complaining about? Nothing. Okay. So let's install that filter onto this component. So I'm going to say import percentage from filters, and then activate it. Filters. There's a set order for the order of all these options within a Vue component. I think filters goes here. You can actually get, I could have told ESLint to shout if I don't put them in the right order, but it is good to keep them consistent. Filters, and I want one called percentage that I've just loaded in. So now that I've installed that, I should be able to say stats.diff and then just pipe it into the percentage filter. So that's looking good, but I want some rounding. And actually, would be kind of cool if this filter could take in a parameter of how much rounding you want. So if I say like precision, let's default it to 0, at which point we're going to say value times 100 dot to fixed, which is a way of saying give me a string with a certain number of decimal points, so precision, and then add a percent symbol on the end. There we go. And if I say here that I would like it to 1 decimal place, then 1 is going to get passed in for that precision. Nice, okay. 2, and so on. I think 1 is perfect. And as we add those, awesome, that one's bigger, that one's smaller. If I make this one go bigger, there you go, now that one says 25% smaller. Okay, this is looking lovely. But I want to visually emphasize the one that's bigger. And I want to do that in a few ways. First of all, this grey bit, I want to change the colours. I want to go for like a green to indicate the winning one. So BG grade 200. I'm going to change that, and we're going to do a dynamic class because it's going to be based on a variable. So I'm going to say if it's the largest one, if this deal is the biggest deal, then I want BG grey. No, if it's the largest one, I want green. If it's not, then we do the grey that we're using at the moment. There we go. Okay, I don't like that green, but that's kind of that's like the brightest that Tailwind default greens go. I want like a bright green. So let's put it back for a second, but all I need to do is go into my Tailwind config and let's extend our colours. So for green, now because green is already like when you use Tailwind extend, you can extend one level deep, so like font sizes, I can just add the 2 font sizes I need. But for things that are nested, which is the font family and the colours, I can extend, like I could add a new colour in here, but if I try and extend and add a green property, I'm going to overwrite all the green colours. So what I need to do is say, let's include in default theme.colors.green. So let's bring all of those ones in, and then on the end add one called bright. And I picked out a colour earlier, which was FD32C. So now I've said that green should, oh there we go, you can actually see it there. So it's got bright and then the numbers 100 to 900. So it's got all the ones from before and also the new one, which means that now I should be able to say BG green bright. Okay, I want the text, which is here, to not necessarily be grey 700. I want it to be grey 700 by default, but when it's the largest one, let's go white to go on the green. Okay, now I want to put those same colours on this as well, which means that rather than copying these, I want to dry it up. So I'm gonna, I don't want to have those colours defined in two places. So I'm going to compute, I'm going to say like the rank background class, as in the class based on whether this is the highest ranking pizza or not. And I'm going to bring in this. And then rank text class, we're going to say and we need to say this dot is largest because we're within the script part of the template now. Okay, so that's now working, but I should now be able to use those to colour this as well. So the bit that says, I also need it to not say pizza option A on all of them, but we'll do that in a second. So the text grey at the moment is defined up there, but it really shouldn't be. I'm going to bring it down to here, and then I'm going to say rank text class instead of text grey 700 and rank background class instead of BG grade 200. There we go, so that now matches that. And then I do like that. And then I want to really I want to pop it out of the screen if you like. So on this guy, I want to say if this is the, well, if it's not the largest, I want nothing. I don't want to add any extra things. So I'm actually better off using this syntax where I say a whole bunch of stuff should only be activated if it's largest. And what should that stuff be? I would say I want to do like a, first I want to scale it. I need a transform as well. Okay, it's already a good start. So now the biggest one is bigger. That's nice. But I think we can do better. I'm going to go. Have I got like a rotate? I want to. Oh, I've got my rotate. Okay, maybe scale it more. Oh, we don't have that one defined. 125. Too big. Okay, maybe I need to define one in between. Let's up its shadow as well. Where's that? Let me just check that. Well, let's just want to make sure. What screwed up with the shadow there? That's going to look into that in a second. Yep, it's got the bigger shadow. I'm confused about this artifact that we're getting, but let's see. Now if I got rid of the padding there, yeah, it also ideally would like this guy to come in front of the others. There we go. Yeah, that's kind of nice. And I definitely want a transition. Yeah, I want like a massive popping transition when that does get larger. So we can do that on the class here. Say transition transform. This yeah, it's just the transforms that need it. Duration. Okay, nice. Much better. But I want something way more popping. So what I'm going to do, CSS easings, easing generator. I think this is the guy. Go for a custom. Right, so I want to, again, we can talk about easing in another video properly, but I basically want it to like pop out and then come back, something like that. So I bring that in. I'm going to need to put it into my Tailwind config as a new transition. Is it transition timing? Yeah, transition timing function. I'm going to call it ease out back. So let's try something like that. And then in the deal we're going to say ease. Sorry, that's, see how the other ones are defined, you don't put the ease. The ease is the, we just call it out and back. And then here we say ease out back. Okay, nice. I reckon we can still do more. I'm actually, so I've got a cubic Bezier function that I've used in the past. I'm going to call it Outback Extreme. And then need to use that here. I'm going to say is Outback Extreme. There we go. That's more of just a slightly more defined bounce. If I delete that one, there we go, that one becomes the biggest, and so on. Oh, I'd like that colour to match. Let's go down to here. And let's give this guy a dynamic class as well. If it's the largest, let's go for a green. There we go. With a hover. So we can put the hover there and say that if it's green, then hover green 800. Okay. Cool, I'm happy with that. I don't care for now that if there's a tie, we don't, whatever, we could adapt for that later. Let's just get this letter changed. So pizza option, let's go deal name. I just want the deal name to be the letter based on this deal's index, really. So let's go to the store and say, so we can get a deal containing PI-ID, number of deals, and so on. We can also say get deal name, and it's going to take in a deal. I could reorganize these. Taking a deal, and it's going to say, first we need to find the index of that deal. So index equals state.deals.index of deal. That's going to give us a number starting from 0, and I want 0 to become A, 1 to become B. So I should just be able to return, I think it's string.fromCharCode. If I say a.charcode at, this is going to give us the, yeah. Right, so I'm going to say take the character at the 0th position of this string, so take the A, give me the Unicode character for it, and then just add the index to that. So if we add 0 we'll get A, but 1 is going to give B, and so on, and then turn that back into a letter. I think that should be all we need. Back into our pizza deal, and define that, return store getters get deal name for this deal. Pizza option A, pizza option B, pizza option C. Awesome. Again, I don't care that once we get to Z we're going to start getting into weird characters, but that's something that we could adjust for next time. Okay, awesome. I think the next thing I would do here is I'd make this responsive. So at the moment, if I toggle to like a mobile width, things are just going to go horrible. But I think we've been going for a few hours. I think I'm going to leave it there and then pick up on responsive as a separate thing on a separate day. So yeah, I think we're going to leave it there for now. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. I hope you've learned something. I hope it's been useful. If you have any questions, if you have any suggestions for future videos, if there's anything you want to learn, if there's anything you didn't understand, whatever, message me. My DMs are open on Twitter. You can email me. You can publicly tweet, whatever. But it's been a pleasure. And the other thing that I would add to this next is something so that you could that would tell you which one, like you could set a price for each one, and it would tell you which one was better value per how much pizza you're getting, rather than just telling you which one is larger. But yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much, and I will see you all soon.